Joining us in studio now is Professor Uzi Rabi, Director at the Moshe Dayan Center for Middle East Studies and Senior Researcher at the Center for Iranian Studies in Tel Aviv University. And also with us is our I-24 News Senior Defense Correspondent, Yonatan Regev. Good morning to both of you. And it is indeed a good morning as we see this rescue operation, a very sophisticated rescue operation, Yonatan. What do we know about what happened there?
Well, as far as we understand, not all the details are clear yet, but as far as we understand, and as was mentioned in the briefing by the IDF spokesperson, the two hostages were held in the second floor of a building in Rafah. Special forces apparently landed on the roof of the building and then broke into the room, the space, the apartment where the two hostages were held. And we have to understand the difference between success, as so happily happened. The difference between success and failure is split seconds, because of course the forces have to arrive, break in, and do all that before the terrorists realize what is happening, before they have time first to react towards the incoming fighters, and also perhaps kill the hostages. But everything happened quickly. We have to understand the forces have to land in, locate the apartment, break in, usually with concrete doors, which are heavy concrete doors, which are obviously locked. No one is opening the door and welcoming them in. All that happened. They were able to break in, surprise the Hamas terrorists, kill them, and then also protect the hostages, because this quickly, in a matter of seconds, became a battle zone. And we heard the IDF spokesperson saying that those fighters protected with their own bodies, protected the two hostages, making sure that they walk out of there alive as quickly as possible and make it safe to safe areas. Another question that was brought up here, Palestinian claims about the fact that many Palestinians were killed during the operation. What exactly were they expecting? What did they think would happen? That Israel would not go after the hostages and try to rescue them? That if there is such an operation, it would not end with many terrorists killed? What exactly did they expect? Is this the NATO Peace Corps? Obviously, a lot of Palestinians were killed. These are not exactly Mother Teresa that was killed. These are terrorists involved in kidnapping, involved in the worst possible things. And yes, they were killed. If the Palestinians, if Hamas wants to raise the claims to the world, go ahead.
And again, we're talking about innocent hostages in this case, and we see the pictures. Elderly hostages, 60 and 70 years old. These are elderly hostages who were kidnapped from their homes in their kibbutz and held hostage for 4 months. 4 months, that's quite a long time. Uzi, I'd like to ask you about the intel required in order for such an operation to go through. Is this intel that the IDF probably received from Hamas terrorists they captured over these last couple of months?
Yes, I definitely think that some of the information was gathered actually by those who took into captivity. I mean, I'm talking about Hamas Nukhba guys who actually stopped fighting and under interrogation actually provided Israel with some information. But I think that this is not the only source. I think it's an ongoing, actually, intel gathering all over the place. Basically, this is something that, first of all, points to high level of professionalism, accuracy, stuff that IDF is, and the other, of course, security forces that took part in it are well known of high quality when it comes to that. But I think that on top of that, this is so important for Israel because Israel has said time and again that is fully committed to this hostages issue, and this is kind of a reminder of how committed Israel is, because those guys actually were sacrificing themselves, actually ready sacrificing themselves in order to just rescue those hostages. And thanks God, actually, it went smoothly this time. And this is, in my opinion, kind of a real good message for both the Israeli public and I think the Israel itself, because there are 134 hostages still there. The commitment is still that, being reiterated that this is something that Israel is committed to. I don't think that, we're going to see actually much of that, because I guess that most hostages are being kept actually on the ground.
Underground in tunnels.
Yeah, but this is definitely something that says that Israel is alive and kicking. Israel is in Rafah. Israel, I mean, this is another question actually. Once we are in Rafah, are we going to capitalize on that, rescue operation in order to go on with the, military, so to speak, saga in Rafah, or we are going actually to confine ourselves to the Philadelphia route, as is the case. We'll have to wait and see. The other thing is how Hamas is going to react.
To respond.
Yeah, because basically, we know from previous knowledge that they would actually, try to come up with a more tight, surveillance on the hostages, monitoring actually all passages. This would make it much more difficult on the one hand, but we have to remind ourselves, the more Israel is deepening its penetration, militarily speaking, in the Gaza Strip, the more levers actually you acquire when it comes to hostages and when it comes to a possible deal, which is being, talked about in Cairo at this moment.
Now, it was mentioned that this operation was in the works for quite a while, and the right conditions were not available for the execution of the operation. What does that mean, that they were not available?
It means that you have to just pick up the right moment to do that. It's the timing is the most, as was said before, the timing is the most, I would say, dimension here. The most important element. And this time, actually, you can see how things actually were performed smoothly, and not only because actually you got the Yamam and you got the special forces, you got the all other disciplines of military work actually being gathered together. The most important thing here was that timing was chosen in kind of a very, very accurate way. And this is why I say, actually, intel gathering for that kind of an operation takes a long time. I mean, it's a prolonged process. And when it comes to the punchline and the right moment, you have to be there. If you snooze, you lose. So that time, it was very, very right in time and very successful.
Jonathan, there are 134 families looking at this operation full of hope that maybe their loved ones will be the next ones to be rescued. What needs to happen for such operations to successfully be executed?
First, intelligence, the right timing. It's a lot of things that come together. Even if there are more rescue operations of this kind, I think that we have to be ready that it will not always be as successful as this time. It is an extremely dangerous and sensitive situation, which in split seconds can end in a different way. This morning it ended in a very happy way, and let's hope it always ends this way. But I think everybody understands that it doesn't always end this way. It happens amid talks of a possible deal. I'm quite sure that we will hear, at least on the short term today, we'll hear Hamas saying that all negotiations are stopped. We're not having any negotiations. We heard yesterday that they're saying that if Israel comes into Rafah, then there are no negotiations at all. On the short term, we might hear that. On the long term, Hamas lost two very important cards today. The hostages are I'll call it the biggest card, maybe the only card that Hamas has, but a very strong card. We know what the meaning is of the hostages, dead or alive, even bodies. They are an important issue for the Israeli society, and Hamas, I think, understands that Israel is eager on bringing them back, even with military operations. And if a deal is not reached at some point, then Hamas may lose cards. I want to be very optimistic and say that Israel can rescue everybody, but I think that's way too illusional and delusional. But Israel proved that it can bring hostages back by force, and Hamas, after putting those impossible terms it did put last week on the deal, could perhaps understand that it's time to perhaps soften its demands, because Israel can bring hostages by power, and Hamas were told reportedly by Egypt yesterday, if you don't soften, if you don't go back on some of your demands, Israel will eventually go to Rafah, and we will not stop them, according to the Egyptians. So it might have an effect on the hostage deal on some ways. We will, of course, have to wait and see. On the other hand, Hamas is now well aware. They were well aware before, but now they're well aware that they have to be extremely tight on the way that they watch the prisoners, because the hostages, because Israel is after them.
Uzi, what do you think? How does this impact the negotiations for a deal? Does it now give Israel some kind of an upper hand in these negotiations?
I think that this is, kind of a card that can be played out by Israel positively. First of all, let's remind ourselves, many people actually have reiterated the assertion that, deepening up the military attack in Gaza stands in sharp contrast to hostages release.
Right.
Well, I think that this was an axiom, because what actually is being proved now is that this is the opposite. So it is not necessarily actually standing in sharp contrast to that. Once again, I think I dare say that there were other opportunities. I'm pretty sure about that. But as I said before, actually, it has to do with the timing and to what extent it would be too risky to go for it. Basically, this is why it is so unique, actually, this operation. Accuracy, professionalism, as we said before. As for the other hostages, as I said before, actually, most of them, in my opinion, actually should be are located underground, and Hamas, after that kind of an operation, would be much more careful while actually keeping them there. But Hamas, in my opinion, actually abilities when it comes to control actually the whole saga in Gaza and maybe in Rafah are being actually dwindled, and basically this is something that could be capitalized on too by Israel.